So I guess playlist will end up being my freestyle playlist or something like that, like a vlog sort of whatever sort of playlist, because I put up a podcast every week, and that podcast is on my YouTube channel, and then I also put up that very same podcast on podcast holders as well. It's audio only, like iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You find it on Google and Stitcher, and I think like some other ones. There's a whole list. It's on my website. I'm on a bunch of different platforms, but that's only the podcast. But it is exactly identical, whether you watch it on YouTube or whether you watch it on the podcast that you listen to it and not watch it. Either way, it works out the same. And anyway, that podcast I do once a week. This one here, I may do once a week, or I may do 3 times a week, or I may do once a month, or I may do 12 times a month. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it'll be like a freestyle for everything else. I gave up smoking a while ago. Don't smoke anymore. It's vapor. And I'm proud of this little guy being a vaporizer, no longer smoking. My grandmother died. It's the most ironic series of events that have taken place recently. So my grandmother died of lung cancer. My grandfather is, he's on oxygen right now because he had smoked earlier in his life, and he actually worked in the factory before OSHA. And so I've got a very personal connection with things like that go into the epigenetic markers of life, because it could be boiled down to epigenetics as to why my grandfather's not going to live another 20 or 25 years that he otherwise could have if not for these events. And smoking was a large part of that, and also working in a industrious firm was a large part of that as well. Chemicals, and people were given masks, but most of the men just don't wear them because the rules didn't. Nobody cared, and but it's epigenetics, you know. And now the thing that's happening right now is that in my place of living, there's actually I rent an apartment, and the gentleman who owns the house, because it's like all one big house, the gentleman that owns it, he's actually retired. He smoked cigarettes his whole life, and he's in the hospital. He's been in the hospital for about 2 weeks now. One day, the other guy went to check on him, and he had literally just grasping for breath on the air and called the ambulance, and he's been in the hospital since. I still got his rent money sitting on my dresser. He's literally in his. Anyway. Smoking. I gave up smoking. I vape now. So vaping is the future. As far as I'm concerned, vaping is the future. Vaping is the future. I drink butter in my coffee, and I do it because of epigenetics. I guess this could also be like an epigenetics playlist, because everything about the development of a human. People think of developmental psychology as in what takes place when the mind is developing. And I know a lot about my past. My parents were pretty strong and religious in their religion. They were pretty strong in their religion, and my parents had baptized me as a Christian, and they had me confirmed in their religion as a Christian, and so that's the background that I'm coming from. And I went to actually parochial school for the first 15 years of my life. They preschool started at 3 years old, so there were 3 and 4-year-old preschool, and then kindergarten up to I was in that environment from age 3 to age 15 or so. And at age 15 is when I started marching band 4 months before starting high school itself. Most of the students only started school when school started. But if you were in some sports like, what was it, football, they started the summer before. And us band people started, us drum corps band people started the, the summer before, 4 months or so. So I was already working my way around the school and getting to know things and getting to know the place even before it started. You know, I had a little swagger about it, so what? But this is my home. This is St. Louis is where I'm from. As far as I'm concerned, Collinsville is St. Louis, just as much as Webster Groves is St. Louis, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it takes me way back to think about how being a musician actually plays into me being a world class business development guy right now. The fact that I do this business development, what really makes it all work out. Number one, you gotta have organized effort. Number two, you gotta have accurate thought. You want those to be sequenced appropriate, so you're flowing momentum because of the sequencing. And how do you get that? Through rhythm. You know, I've been in the rhythm. I started out as a saxophone actually, and went from saxophone to percussion. And I felt like before I transitioned to percussion, I always had training wheels on my musicianship, on my ability to perform. And it was like a plateau that I broke through when I switched to percussion. Things started to make sense in a new way. And I had a whole new appreciation for the art that is music performance. And even being on a YouTube video like this is kind of like being in performance mode. So being in performance mode, if you never were a part of sports or some sort of performance thing, it plays into how the mind is developing. What I'm trying to say. It's like if I ever had children someday, yeah, they'd be involved in something. I don't know what, but something. You know, maybe a few things if they wanted to, but something that got them involved. Because getting involved, like a friend of mine, when she was younger, she did dance. I think one of my cousins did dance. All in all, performance is also a psychology. Performance psychology, as far as I can understand it, is summed up in two other people's understandings. I like to take my understanding from two other people and then make my own, rather than making an average of 20 people's understandings or perspectives. I'd rather just take a look at two people's perspectives and then get my own from that, you know. Anyway, Tim Ferriss, number one, and Josh Waitzkin, number two. Between Tim Ferriss and Josh Waitzkin, those two men pretty much explain what performance psychology is all about at a world class level. Because we were at a pretty semi national. It was broken up into we were nation level. I mean, WGI actually stands for international. We were part of the same organization from all around the world. World Guard International Percussion Performers started out as Winter Guard only. Some years later, all the percussionists decided they wanted something to do in the winter as well. Thus, it was born. Performance psychology. So I take that into account when I'm doing salesmanship. You know, I've got 4 years of sales experience. Started out with Cutco under Carly Michaela. Never could say her name. And then ended up with the Alliance, this life insurance company with under Hal Rosen and Paul Roberts Alliance, the Roberts group under the Alliance. And I really enjoyed that. It was a great experience for me. All the people were pretty people friendly, and I've been part of other. I'd say about half, maybe a little less than half of my. I guess about a little less than half, maybe 45% of my sales experience was in a multi-level marketing company. So most people don't like those type of companies. I actually don't mind them. They're just it's a cause and effect. I have a very sober view of the world, a very objective view of the world, that I put little bits of my own emotion onto what I observe, and I just observe it as objectively as I can. Uh, and that's the case here. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Andrew Carnegie. Oh, so backstory. This book, Think and Grow Rich, based on the author's famed law of success, represents the distilled wisdom of distinguished men of great wealth and achievement. Based on Andrew Carnegie's magic formula for success, was the direct inspiration for his disclosed secret, and you may have whatever you want in life. Read yourself into a fortune. Negative attitude towards others can never bring me success. So, in terms of the last video, when I talked about poisonous people, I've been reading this each day. I'm going to keep reading it. It says, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. Pause. That's only the first. Yeah, it's a big, long, run-on sentence. That's only the first sentence. Now, what that means to me is that I'm going to stop looking for situations in which other people lose so that I can win. I'm going to start looking in ways that I can win and as many other people as possible can win too. That's what that means for me. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. Leadership psychology is something I absolutely am mastered at, world class, phenomenal level, because of John Maxwell and because of memorization. The way the brain works is that you could say that a belief is like 100 words or thoughts. A belief is like 100 thoughts, and then you could say that a value is like 100 beliefs. A value is like 100 beliefs. So a value is a super condensed thought. And if you want to think new thoughts, values are how you do it. And how do you instill these subconscious beliefs and values? That's where they're stored in an archetype sort of database through archetypes in your subconscious. That's where they're at. How do you get in touch with them? I'll show you how. Right here. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use in the cooperation of other people. So for me, John Maxwell used to be a pastor. He became a sort of public speaker and author and wrote several books about leadership, very highly respected. When I was at SIU, I was part of the NSLS, the National Society of Leadership and Success, the National Society of Leadership and Success. And one of the first uh, videos that we watched was him on stage at some sort of convention for the National Society of Leadership and Success. I actually volunteered not only to be a part of the organization, but also in the first semester of becoming a member, I volunteered to be an executive officer as well. They had interviews, and several people were interviewed for the executive. I'm pretty sure I got that position because of this book, but that's a story for another later day. National Society of Leadership and Success. I was a S&T coordinator, and the S&Ts were the very foundation of the NSLS. And the Success Networking Team, S&T stands for Success Networking Team, and Success Networking Team is in which we meet up in small groups, so 6 to 10 people, usually 6 to 8 people, small groups, and everyone talks during the time. Everyone talk about their goals, what they want to accomplish, what they are accomplishing, what they hope to accomplish later on. And it's very much a mastermind meetup, as would be related to this book. I believe it's chapter 10 that's about the mastermind principle, the power of the mastermind, driving force, how to multiply your brain power, the power of positive emotion. So basically, you get a cumulative effect. You get an effect together, like let's say that you have a certain amount of brain power, and let's say that you have a brain power of like 100 units, and I have another brain power of 100 units. Okay, so we both have the brain power of 100 units. But when you put us together, you don't get 200 units. Because of the power of the mastermind, you get something more like 285 units. That's a lot more than just 200 units. You think 100 plus 100 does not equal 285 units, but it does. And it does because of the power of the mastermind. Mastermind just means getting together. Anyway. So that's what I do with my clients in my business development firm. The mastermind is a huge part of it. And it says right here that Think and Grow Rich is based on the author's famed Law of Success. The Law of Success was his earlier book. Before Think and Grow Rich, he wrote the Law of Success. And the Law of Success is something that I took a personal study to in depth during my time in life insurance, which was the last tail end of my sales career before I officially started a business in which I was the sole organizer. So I'm very proud of having become a business owner. This YouTube channel is only a small part of it, but it's a way that I believe in giving back and paying it forward, having a generous heart and a generous mind, because it was very much YouTube educational / inspirational stuff that helped me to eventually build my own dream of life. You can do the same thing. Remember to dream big. That's core value one. Do it.